have a question. We're jumping around a little bit, but this one is a concerning question that I have, and I'm going to give my opinion first because I have a very strong opinion.
Okay.
But you know me, I'm very opinionated.
What?
But
All right.
it's a question that's coming in from YouTube, from Tom, and he wants to know, in your opinion, he wants to know your opinion on axillary bifemoral bypasses. Have there been recent advancements? What's the expectancy of this to last? I have seen this rarely work. I have seen in every situation where I have gotten involved and gotten the patient a second and even third opinion, including one just this week, where the doctor said to the patient that this is the easiest thing to do. It's you've already had a cabbage. There, all these other procedures, doing an aorto bifemoral bypass, which usually is the kind of the step before. It's just going to be a lot bigger for you. The axillary bypass, it could last you 7 years. Well, they don't even go into the actual data, which shows a 30% mortality rate with it in even the first month. They don't exhaust all minimally invasive efforts. I had one person out here in California that literally ultimately was treated with a TPA, catheter delivery of clot busting drugs in the aorta. And the vascular surgeon says to me, "Oh no, yeah, we could do that, but it's not going to last very long. The axillary bifemoral bypass is going to last up to 7 years. So we're just going to try and work on kicking the can as far forward as we can." But what is the contingency plan? We tell every one of our patients, if you end up having to have a procedure, you always need to ask the doctor, you might be kicking the can forward, but what happens when that fails? And with the axillary bifemoral bypass, we've had too many experiences where it becomes life on the line at that point. There's nothing that a lot of these doctors can do, even with some of the advances in medicine and the durability for those, number one. And number two, we've had a cardiologist tell one of our patients that her heart is actually in jeopardy. Actually, two of our patients, another gentleman who's on the line here as well, that it actually ended up putting his heart and her heart in jeopardy. And then number three is it bypasses all of the major organs, the kidneys. And so if you don't open up the aorta, you're ending up your kidneys and such are surviving off of these collaterals, is what I was told. I'm not an anatomy expert, I'm not a doctor, but I can only tell you that we have sent people for axillaries. They've been in literally life-threatening situations,
Yeah.
and but they're the last of the last. Doctors will tell you, vascular surgeons, advanced vascular surgeons tell us it is palliative care. It's the Hail Mary of Hail Marys, last resort, and if it's possible, there's any other option, take the other option. So that being said, I told you I'm opinionated. I'm happy to have you
Yeah.
share and even contradict me if you'd like, but I can only
No, I
go
mean,
by my experience.
I wouldn't contradict that in the sense of I agree everybody should ask why not another option. I got to be honest with all of you. It's not fair that you need to be asking these questions, but
Mm-mm.
that's unfortunately the reality is the limitations of somebody's abilities, experience, or politics or whatever it is shouldn't be your problem. But unfortunately, we live in a world where that is what you need, and you're lucky to have Kim providing the kind of options and telling you what to seek out. But I think about it this way: when my mom had cancer, the first question should be, how many opinions do we need? It should never be, okay, let's just trust the system. And I come from a country where you don't ask questions. In India, you basically sometimes don't even tell the family member they're sick because it messes with their mind and they don't even want to tell them they have cancer. So we live in a different world where you have to seek out second, third, fourth opinions. Unfortunately, axon bypass is not great because it's a prosthetic man-made bypass graft going from your armpit to your groins. So it's not great no matter what you do. In an emergency trauma situation, sometimes when other options have been exhausted by capable people, whether it's a surgeon, a cardiologist, or an IR who does aortas and iliacs or talks together about it, then, if everybody crosses those bridges, I think, it is fine. That's a decision to take. You do get what we call retrograde flow through the bypass, or meaning that the blood flow comes down through the bypass to the groins, but it'll often go back up to a certain degree to certain areas. Now, whether it feeds the organs or not, it depends on how long that blockage in your aorta is. If your blockage in your aorta is below the kidneys, which many of them are, all the blood flow to the kidneys and your gut should be still maintained. The heart's a little different story because patients who have coronary bypasses and stuff, that may be stealing some blood flow from the heart because those bypasses take blood from your arteries by your shoulders. So that may be one of what the cardiologist is talking about. So does it cause immediate demise? No. The patency is not great, but if everything else has been exhausted by a team of people, then I think that's worth a conversation. If multiple people can come together and say, yes, I agree. The way that always interests me is patients when they hear cancer, they're like, let's book a ticket to Mayo, Rochester. We'll go to that cold city. I don't care. But when we tell them that you're going to lose your leg, they don't want to come downtown Chicago from Indiana. So I think it's the understanding of all this and being willing to ask all the questions, asking what, why not, what else, who else. This is arterial cancer. There's no such thing. I've been using that term for like 7-10 years. There's no such thing as it, but I think it is kind of like that. We have to keep people in remission and cancer free, arterial disease free if we can. That should be our goal. We have to kind of come up with the understanding for this for everybody. But I agree with Kim. That should never be the first step. If someone's offering you a long bypass like that, ask why not and who else can try it.
And you bring up a good point about emergency situations, and that was actually with one of our patients where they came to us and said they want to do this axillary bifemoral bypass, and I said, "Is your aorta infected?" And they said, "Yes." And I said,
Yeah.
get that bypass. We'll figure it out later because once they treat and they're able to get the medications in there into the aorta, then they can always go back at that point, and then they can treat the aorta. So if that axillary does go down, they still actually do have the backup with the
Yeah.
aorta that they can go ahead and make sure that that's opened up and free flowing as
Mm.
well. But
The
second,
emergency the
third
emergency
opinions.
situation, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt.